We've got about 10 minutes, and I'm going to cover something really important with you guys. And this is a topic that, and a question that I get asked about tremendously. So what I want to do is take, seriously, we're going to do this in 10 minutes. There's a lot of information here, but you're going to be able to come back and you guys will be able to watch this again. Now, I can't see you if you're interacting with me, but please do post your questions and let me know. As we go, if you have any questions, my staff and I will try to get back to you. But what we're going to talk about is, do you have leaky gut? This concept of leaky gut is something that is controversial. People tell me all the time that their doctors don't believe in leaky gut, and people ask me all the time, how do I know if I have leaky gut? And it's a controversial topic, but there's literature on this, and I'm actually going to talk about what leaky gut is, and I'm going to talk about how we test for it. I'm going to talk about some of the causes of leaky gut, and then some of the ways that we would work to try and improve leaky gut. I'm even going to talk about some of the time frames that you could expect when trying to heal. Okay? So all right, let's start from the very beginning. So when we talk about leaky gut, we're talking about the intestinal wall, and the intestinal wall being permeable or having holes in it that allow molecules and things through into the bloodstream that can trigger an immune response. Okay? So what I did was I drew a normal gut barrier. When I talk about the gut barrier and we're talking about leaky gut, we're talking about the lining of the intestinal tract. Okay? So the lining of the intestinal tract is one cell wall thick. So you see I have one cell thick. Hopefully you guys can see this. And this is basically a row here of cells that are grouped together. They're touching one another, so they touch here. And then on the top of the cells, you'll see these little, looks like shag carpet, these little finger-like projections called microvilli. Now, the normal healthy gut barrier looks like this, and then there is a mucus barrier on top of that that gives you this wall that is selectively permeable, meaning that it lets things through. Like this is the inside of the GI tract. It lets them through on to this other side of the wall, which is in the bloodstream. Okay, so like your food, as your food proteins break down, they break down into amino acids, which are building blocks that your body will use. Those will go through into the bloodstream, but that's selective. Okay, so with leaky gut, this barrier system is not intact, and it lets larger molecules and things through. So let's talk about what that is. So this picture here represents what leaky gut is. Okay, so I'm going to explain it to you. See these things with the shag-like carpets? These are cells. These are the cells. So it's like these cells here that are side by side, but we're zoomed in a little bit closer. The cell's larger. You see the shag-like carpets on the top. You see them there? So we have 4 cells. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one's damaged and this is damaged, which is what we're going to talk about. So with leaky gut, what happens is this wall gets damaged one of 2 ways. The cell itself, so you see here, this is an intact, healthy enterocyte or cell that lines your GI tract wall. It can be damaged, and you can have bacteria and what we call antigens, or things that can trigger an immune response. That's what an antigen is. Go through the cell. This is called transcellular, meaning through the cell. And you can see this means the cell's destroyed so that these things can make their way into the bloodstream here. So remember, this side above this is going to be inside the GI tract. On this side of the cells is the bloodstream. Okay? So these things that can trigger an immune response and that we believe can promote autoimmunity, that are here inside the GI tract and that may be there normally, make their way through this wall and they get into the bloodstream where they shouldn't be because the cell has been damaged. Okay? Now that's one method of these things that can trigger an immune response, antigens, and we're going to talk about LPSs, lipopolysaccharides, in just a second, how they can make it from the GI tract through the gut wall into the bloodstream. Okay? Now, a second way that these antigens, that can trigger an immune response, can get from the GI tract into the bloodstream is they can go paracellular between the cells. Now, you see here, these healthy cells have, we have it represented by blue, and then these pink, blue, pink gates. Now, that's actually this network of, they call these tight junctions. So they're tight, they're close together, and they're joined, and these gates let things through them very selectively. So they do let things cross, like amino acids and things that we want here. But if these gates get damaged, then you can have these antigens or these things that trigger an immune response make their way through into the bloodstream and trigger an immune response. Guys, this is leaky gut. This is when we talk about leaky gut, this is what we're talking about. Damage of the cells, damage of the gates here that allow things into the bloodstream and trigger an immune response. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to talk a little bit about like what causes this to happen, right? What causes this gut wall to break down? And there's a lot of things. Really, so I've got just some information I was going to share with you guys. So an imbalance, let's go through a few things. An imbalance of gut bacteria. So if you have an overgrowth of opportunistic bacteria or an overgrowth of candida or yeast, that can cause irritation and inflammation here that can contribute to breaking down these barriers, letting things that are in the GI tract into the bloodstream and triggering an immune response. Okay? The different types of trauma to the gut wall, so like surgeries, for example. Different stress. You know, stress is something that people don't really think of as promoting leaky gut, but it does spike cortisol levels, and with prolonged stress, this can break down and contribute to poor repair and recovery of the mucosal lining. Guys, keep in consideration, one cell thick with a mucous membrane on top, okay? That helps to prevent it. So things like stress, things like starvation, strenuous exercise, radiation, emotional traumas that can spike and dip cortisol. Other things like medications and then allergenic foods. Now, when we think of allergenic foods, the most common and classical thing here is going to be like a true food allergy, to gluten, like celiac disease. Okay, that can damage this and cause this to occur and let things from the GI tract into the bloodstream. The other thing is different types of medications, supplements. Certain supplements could do this. Some kind of certain diets might induce this type of problem. So these are all things, you know, use of antibiotics, steroids, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. So some people will use these non-steroidal or NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, very, very readily without really any, considering what it could be doing to their digestive tract. And we know that if you take too many anti-inflammatories that it can promote ulcers, right? I mean, have you heard that before? Well, this could be like another way that those things could thin or inhibit the repair of these mucosal linings. I mean, that's why you can develop ulcers from taking too many of those anti-inflammatories. So let's see, what else? Chronic yeast infections, insufficiencies of enzymes. So if you have like low stomach acidity and the low acid is causing you to not have adequate release of pancreatic enzymes or biliary bile salts, you might not break your food down well, and that can set the stage for bacterial problems and more reactivity to foods. You know, the standard American diet's full of things that could contribute to breakdown of preservatives and things that are in the foods, that chemical residues and all these things that could irritate and disturb this delicate gut wall. Excessive alcohol or caffeine are another thing that could contribute to the breakdown here. Okay, so this is kind of like, those are the things that can cause this to occur. Now let's talk about something. I want to talk about some of the consequences, some of the things that can occur that this can result in, and then how we test for it. Okay, so all right. So here's the deal. First of all, we know that when these types of these antigens, these things that are in the digestive tract, if they make their way into the bloodstream here, that's where your immune system is, and your immune system is constantly surveying this area and looking for things that are foreign. So your immune system will start reacting to these different proteins from your food, these lipopolysaccharides, which are toxins that are actually on the surface of bacteria. So you can have like bacterial infections or bacteria that's in the gut. If those bacteria and these lipopolysaccharides that are on the cell wall make their way into the bloodstream, we know that they are very inflammatory. Okay, and lipopolysaccharides, for example, this is a really important one. They accumulate in tissues. They can actually accumulate. They make their way in here. They can accumulate in tissues. They can be responsible for and or are associated with heart disease, metabolic syndrome like prediabetes. They can bioaccumulate in neurological tissues, and these things promote an inflammatory response, guys. They can be associated with refractory depression, so bouts of depression. Thyroid, there's some research that shows that they might be associated with thyroid storms, which is more commonly associated with Graves', and then also liver cirrhosis. Now we know that these lipopolysaccharides, now again, that's what I did here was, the lipopolysaccharides are purple, right, so they're here, and I have LPS, and there's some other things we're going to talk about that with testing in just a second. But guys, this is the kind of stuff that promotes chronic inflammation and that we believe promotes autoimmunity. Okay, we know that lipopolysaccharides are very, very inflammatory. Okay, so I wanted to kind of talk about that. We're going to talk about now testing and then about how long it takes to heal. So I've just got a few minutes and then I've got to go. But so let's talk about testing first. So one of the common ways, I'm going to stand over here. One of the common ways that we test for this is going to be Cyrex Labs Array number 2. This is going to be the definitive test, the only test that I'm going to use to evaluate for this. Now, the way that we really can use this clinically is we can get Cyrex Labs Array 2 done, and it will check for antibodies for an immune response to actomycin, which is basically a muscle, guys. It's made of muscle, and I drew here the actomycin is the blue stuff you see here in the cells. You see it there? It's kind of like a shoelace, okay, and it holds the cell together. So we can check for actomycin. I'm going to talk about some of the implications on this test. It's a blood draw, and it looks for antibodies to actomycin in the blood, which should not be there. It looks for zonulin and occludin, which zonulin and occludin, remember I talked about these gates over here? These things that keep the cells together and selectively let things through from the gut into the bloodstream? Well, these things, if they're broken down due to an inflammatory process or the causes of leaky gut, then we can see that when it's broken like this, you'll find in the bloodstream that there'll be occludin and zonulin, and you can test antibodies. So if we detect occludin and zonulin in the bloodstream with antibodies, then we can be pretty sure that this junction, this space, that these proteins that hold together the cells have been broken down and are in the bloodstream, so that we can assume that this paracellular system is broken down because we're getting antibodies in the bloodstream that shouldn't be there. Now, if we find actomycin in the bloodstream, which is like here, we know that we've probably got transcellular, so the cell's destroyed. This is more severe, guys, where you'll find that this actomycin's here, and if you're reacting and you have actomycin in the bloodstream, it's going to take longer to heal. And you might be dealing with, that's where you're going to, if you see actomycin here in the bloodstream, you're more likely dealing with celiac disease, an autoimmune inflammatory condition, or a very severe infection. Okay, something like that is where you're going to see actomycin. Zonulin and occludin, you'll find those more commonly here. And if you find lipopolysaccharides in the bloodstream, now remember, lipopolysaccharides are on the covering of bacteria that are typically in the gut. If you find them here, then you can be, then that leads us to more of the, helps us to determine that bacteria or an infection may be causing this, and these lipopolysaccharides, obviously, they shouldn't be there. We know that there's inflammation and that drives autoimmunity. So when we see this, depending on the combination of things that we find, and there's a lot of different ways. I mean, obviously you could have occludin and zonulin, not actomycin. You could have actomycin by itself. You could have lipopolysaccharides by themselves. So guys, depending on what you find and what combination is going to help you determine what's causing it, and then also how long it might take to help it recover. So we can use this Cyrex test as a way to start and say, okay, do we have permeability in the digestive tract? If we have this environment that's set up, then it gives us a baseline so we can retest and evaluate your progress. It also helps us know, like, what's our prognosis, what's our if we identify the drivers. And guys, that's the key. If you don't identify the drivers and the causes of this, then you can't. How are you going to help it heal? I mean, if you're going to be guessing at what's driving this process, and there's a lot of different things that can drive it. So foods, chemicals, infections are the primary things. Stress. So we've got this information. We can better determine the prognosis. If you're reacting, there's actomycin, and we know that there's this type of transcellular damage, guys, we're looking at a year to recover and help this heal. And that's if we identify all the drivers and we work on utilize a good protocol to help the gut heal. Now, if you see more of like occludin and zonulin, maybe 6 months is more reasonable. But this kind of stuff takes time. Removing the triggers is very, very important, and assuming that you can identify and remove the triggers will play into this. So this is leaky gut, guys. This is really, I hope this helps you better understand it. This contributes to thyroid autoimmunity, and I do have to go. I have someone right now that I've got to work with. And you guys can look at, if you want to learn about diets that we might use to start working on this, guys, you can go to thyroidprogram.com, which is our 6-week Hashimoto's transformation program. This, guys, the diet that we use here would really help almost anyone that's autoimmune. But we use it primarily, and we're focused on, I work mainly with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, an autoimmune thyroid condition. But you can go to thyroidprogram.com and learn more about the diet there. We actually give away that program once a month. If you enter that, you can enter the giveaway, and you can actually get the program after that if you want it. Or you can go, if you're interested in like supplementation, what type of nutritional supplementation I might use, you can go to hashimotosupplements.com. You enter your email there, and it will take you to basically a class that I teach on helping you assess what supplementation might be best for you, and it even gives you access to my private nutritional supplementation dispensary that you can see online. So guys, this is Leaky Gut. I hope it's helped you out. I hope this helps you understand and demystify this thing that people talk about. There's scientific literature on this, guys. This is not something that is out there that is just some kind of alternative medicine, well, let's just say that. There's great science behind it. You can look up Alessio Fasano, a Harvard researcher, is doing tremendous work. But we can quantify it. We can test. So if you have any questions, let us know. Post your comments below. I hope this helps you guys out, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks. Hey guys, Dr. Shook, thank you for viewing our videos. I hope they help you out. If you want to, just subscribe to our channel somewhere here. You can watch a video that YouTube's actually selected for you, so hopefully it'll help you out. If you need any other information or resources, just look in the description. We've got links to our website, to our 9 lab test guidebook, and everything else that we do. I really appreciate you, and I hope you guys have a great